Greetings, everybody. This is EAT, Educating Africa on Technology. I am your host, BTC King, and we are coming to you live from the continent and also via the United States of America. We have a dear brother here, dear friend of the show, Mr. Ansel Floyd. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, D. How are you?
I'm good. Finally, we had some technical difficulties on Tuesday. I was out in the village taking care of some business out there, and the internet connection, I checked before, it was good that day, but the day that I was there was not good. So we had to postpone the show, and we're recording it and making it live now. So welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. Same here. I'm glad to be on the show. Glad to sit and talk with you, and much appreciated.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure. And can you tell the people about your background, where you're from, what you do, okay, and how did you find your way into cryptocurrency?
Well, let's start with the long of it. I was born in Guyana. That's in South America geographically. It's in South America. Culturally, it's part of the Caribbean. It's one of the 6 founding members of the Caribbean community, the CARICOM government. I moved here when I moved to Brooklyn, New York when I was about 5 years old. Grew up there, went through high school, graduated high school, went to college at the University of Maryland, decided to make a life here in Maryland. That life was interrupted by about 5 years moving down to Atlanta, Georgia. My wife had to finish up her schooling, and we just had a baby, so had to head down there for her. Then after the 5 years was up, we moved back here to Maryland in 2012. Ever since then, I would say with the crypto journey, probably around 2015, a cousin of mine kept telling me about this Bitcoin. Then when the ETH came out, he started to talk about Ethereum, and I'm just like, yeah. I was heavily into stocks then, doing different things. I wasn't trying to listen. Then came around 2017, the bull run. That started. So that started to pique my interest. So around the summer of 2017, I took it upon myself. I did a deep dive into crypto for about 4 months before I even made a purchase. I'm just anal like that. I like to know what I'm getting into, and I never put money into something just because I need to understand it. So that took me about 4 months, because as you know, once you start going down that rabbit hole, it's all over. You get it, you get hooked. That was really what brought me into crypto. There was a program that I was introduced to, I signed up for. It was called the Digital Underground. Had some teachers in there like Lamar Wilson, like Mark Moss, who really set the stage for my understanding of crypto, and particularly Mark Moss, because he came at it very differently. He came at it from a macro perspective, understanding the big macro picture and how that relates to crypto and how that would make crypto grow. So from there, that was all she wrote. I've been focused ever since. Been working, I still work my full-time job. I am a government contractor, but crypto is, I love it. It's really taken over my life. So
growing up, I appreciate you sharing that with us. Growing up in, would you say that would be the Caribbean? An extension of the Caribbean?
Yes. Family, definitely. A lot of people will probably joke, oh, you're in Guyana for 5 years. What do you know? Every year, my parents would send me back for summers. So I feel like I still grew up there. a lot, and my family is to this day very pillars in the community. So family-wise, structure-wise, it was a Caribbean household.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what do you feel is missing when we're talking about the Caribbean? We're talking about the diaspora. And for those that may not be familiar with that dynamic of diaspora, we're talking about, the continent of Africa. We're talking about slave trade routes. And we're talking about the areas that slaves ended up being brought to and used as free labor to help colonize, if we would use it that way, certain areas of the Caribbean, if not all the Caribbean, South America, and into North America. What is missing from the most of the diaspora, let's call it 80% plus, having access to cryptocurrency, just like the East does, meaning Asia, just like Europe and the North America does? What is missing, do you say? What would you say about that?
The number one thing that's missing is education, bar none. I think, again, with my journey in crypto and, talking to a lot of other people with their journey in crypto, you've got people that live in the first world countries that have easier access to the knowledge. But, because of one thing or another, they don't take it. And it's that educational part. So I think across the diaspora, wherever you are, the number one thing is education and truly understanding what crypto is and truly understanding how it can benefit us. And it's not just something where you put money into and then you're going to become super rich overnight. And, it's really a life raft. That's really what it is. In places like the Caribbean, in places like Lebanon, in places like Cuba, in places like El Salvador, in places like all across Africa, in most of these places, it ends up being a life raft. And that part of the education needs to get out a little bit more. I think what's been taken over is the fact that people see quick gains. And sometimes that greed prohibits people from really diving into it and understanding the principles, the characteristics of money, all of these things that we talk about that are important to financial literacy. So yeah, I would say education, number one.
Okay. Well, that's I would agree with that. And that's something that we see here, even in Accra, in Ghana, the necessary element of education when it comes to talking about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. And the second thing that I would say or add to that is the awareness of it. I would say the awareness of cryptocurrency and its ability to be utilized. Most people, I find, the average Joe that is here in Ghana may have heard of Bitcoin, but don't really have a base knowledge of, what Bitcoin is for,
right,
what blockchain technology is for, etc. But they've heard it, right? And they heard the gains, like you said. It's always that element that peaks its head in these emerging markets in these countries. And we need to do a better job, I think, of doing the educational piece in a deep dive level. So awareness, education, and access, those three things, I believe will, if done well, will transform the diaspora.
Yeah.
And we need more melanated voices to drive this message throughout the diaspora and show the usage of the technology in a real world environment instead of it being just theory.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk to you about next is how do you feel, what are some of the ways that you feel blockchain technology could benefit a continent like Africa?
I think it's an emerging market. It's one of those emerging markets. And what I see is that blockchain, it can tap into so many things on the continent because once again, one of the biggest principles of blockchain is permissionless,
Right.
where there's been so much going on in different countries where the government swoops in and tries to take things over and tries to dictate what can be done, what can't be done. We saw the example of the protests in Nigeria, where the government shut down bank accounts of the young people in Nigeria, and they went to straight peer-to-peer trading with Bitcoin to fund their protests. That's the type of permissionless freedom that's needed to be able to sustain and to be able to withstand all avenues of government, of the fiat world, whether it's the IMF, the World Bank, the United States, coming to shut down something that you create. And I think Africa is so untapped in terms of the knowledge and the spirit of the people there, in terms of being able to build something and build different projects, to get behind certain projects and foster their own community to build out this space. Because at the end of the day, that's what this space is all about. It's about community. And if a community, a large enough community can be built up over there around different ideas, different projects, there's no stopping. There's no stopping.
Right.
You know?
Peer-to-peer crypto transactions, I think, is the easiest way to foster adoption in any country, in any region around the world. And, when you look at strong-held countries like Zimbabwe here in Africa, right, where they have, if I have this correctly, one trade desk, for US dollars in the whole country.
Wow.
In the whole country, right? The Zimbabwe dollar is similar to the Venezuelan bolivar as far as hyperinflation setting in on the currency, and it's virtually useless. And so you have a situation where the locals in Zimbabwe don't have readily access to fiat rails or alternative fiat rails, let's say it that way, outside of the Zimbabwean dollar. Some people have USD, but it's very limited access there. And so when you see places like that, the Congo, DRC, what is another place? Places like Mali, Guinea, these French-speaking countries, even here in Ghana, that where the law there's been no law against crypto, but there's been no law for crypto. Right. So there's a lot of ways I see this playing out, but peer-to-peer transactions, especially in the cross-border space, is something I believe that could really open up a lot of different channels for payments here, and doing trade, inter-African trade, right?
Right, exactly.
Not necessarily international trade,
inter-African,
too, but truly there's an underlying issue of doing inter-African trade, because you have all of these different African currencies. You have the CFA countries that all use CFA to do their trade, and even though it's got a different name for each country, the underpinning is still the franc. So dealing with those remittances issues, cutting down on efficiencies, making it more easier for people to utilize, cutting down on the cost of sending funds from here in Ghana to Kenya to Tanzania to Egypt. That is huge. And
Right.
the moment that the educational level gets to a height to where most people are aware of cryptocurrency, crypto wallets, and how to
Yes.
utilize them, how to send and receive between two people, I think that alone would increase the level of transactions volume for the
Mhm.
continent of Africa. It'll create a sense of efficiency for commerce throughout the continent
Mhm.
of Africa and for individual use. And that is the beginning of crypto adoption throughout the emerging market world. Because as Africa goes, I believe so does the world.
Yes. And that's the interesting part that I see all of this shaping out. You do have certain companies like a company heads like a Cash App or like a Square, Jack Dorsey taking an interest in Africa. You do have companies like Strike
Yeah.
helping to implement Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador. So you do have these entities that can work with countries. The interesting thing that I see is that Africa has enough knowledge and enough, manpower, enough creativity to create their own over
Yeah.
there. And that's what I would love to see. Charles Hoskinson's, he wants, ADA in Africa, and it's in Kenya, it's in a couple of countries, Zimbabwe, etc. But I would like to see our people take it into their own hands and build out what they see fit for them in this arena, in the blockchain space. And hey, if it's okay if you're using a chain, we're not saying to pretty much reinvent the wheel. There are some chains that you can build on top of, build apps, things like that. And that's what I look forward to in the next coming years, to see what comes out of there in terms of cross-border payments, etc. So
Yeah. So what you're speaking on is young Africans developing solutions for Africa.
yes.
What do you feel hinders that from accelerating here on the continent of Africa?
My mother-in-law is from South Africa. My father-in-law was from the Congo. I see a lot of that tribalism in a lot of ways that hampers a lot of different things from that perspective. When you have that tribalism versus the unity, which is what's needed to change the entire system, where, whether it's Nigerians going to South Africa to find work, and the South Africans blame Nigerians for all the issues. They had a lot of not uprisings, but issues with each other going on, whether it's Tanzanians going across the border into different places. When you have that tribalism, I think it's hard to get people to work together, and which I hope the building of the tech space, the building of these blockchain incubators in Africa, hopefully that can get over that. Having more conferences to bring people in to understand, look, we have an opportunity to make a change. We have an opportunity to be part of this revolution and decide the future of what our continent, not country, what our continent can look like. So.
Right. I think you're onto something with that. Is the willingness to work together, to lay aside the differences of each country and look at the common goal of, hey, it's not us against us, it's us against them, and the them is the colonizers in a way.
Yes.
Because if you don't own your own currency,
yes,
then you don't own your country.
Exactly.
I'm gonna say that again for the listeners, for it to really sink in. I know we have people from the central banks watch this show. I know we have people from the banks watch this show, but truth is power. And truth in today's world needs to be spoken boldly, unashamedly, and loudly.
Yes.
If a country doesn't own or control its currency, the country doesn't have true power to make decisions for the betterment of the people, of the society, for generations to come.
Yes.
And the problem, the biggest problem here on the continent of Africa, you still have France pillaging Africa through the mechanism of central bank currencies.
Yes.
You still have Britain and the United Kingdom doing the same thing. You have Germany doing the same thing. Europe, the European countries still are dominating through currency, the African countries. So at some point, a president or many different presidents here in Africa has to get downright sick and tired, frustrated, pissed off, unpolitical, and say, look, for the last 7 to 10 generations, these currencies have failed our people here in Africa.
Yes.
How can we reimagine Africa with a currency that is owned by Africans?
Now that right there, that's a very hard sell. And that's the part I think people don't realize. Money also acts as a system of control.
Yes.
And that's the part that people don't realize. That's the hard part for many of us to get over, because the powers that be will not give up that control. Just for instance, and what's happening in Africa is not unique to Africa. It happened in the Caribbean, all over the world, where people are repressed, oppressed by their government. That's why over the last couple of years, we've seen so many uprisings in different parts of the world. You know, the news hardly covers it, but it's not only Black people that are oppressed. We have to get out of that mindset. It's a classism, it's a classist structure. There are a lot of oppressed people in different places. Of course, our oppression runs really deep. And it's, that's the main thing. But also today, the system of fiat oppresses many other cultures across the world. Look at Argentina, look at, again, Lebanon. Look at some of these places where people are just starving. Look at France itself. France had many protests, where people are starting to realize that this system is built to keep the masses down and have us fighting over pretty much breadcrumbs. And for the first time, if people can just see it and understand it, we have the option to say, I want to exit the system. I want to exit the system. One main thing, there was, I think last year, Trump had put some, whether it's embargoes or sanctions on Iran, right? So there were Iranian citizens in Malaysia that had been in Malaysia for 10 years, for over 10 years. Those banks in Malaysia, they closed down their bank accounts based on those sanctions from Iran. These people live in Malaysia. So when we talk about money as a system of control, that's what we're talking about. When your country can be pretty much cut off from the access to funds, from the access to money, when they can cut you off at your feet to say, hey, no more money for you. Look at what happened in Greece in 2013. People went to take their money out of the bank. The bank said, nope, that's ours now. So these are the things that we have to fully understand in the global macro perspective. in how money works, how the IMF is tied in, how the World Bank is tied in, how the Bank of International Settlements is tied in to all of this and how they control it. So that's why there's such a dire need. That's why people like D and I are so passionate about crypto, because it gives us a way out. It gives us, for the first time in history, and what we talk about when we say the separation of money and state.
Yes, yes. And so when you have the separation of money and state, we got to go back to the early days of the settlers in America. Mm-hmm. And I think this is true for a lot of different countries. In the early days of countries coming out and being young, the settlers controlled the financial system, meaning mom and dad and families own X amount of land in this sector of America. Everything was paid off. You work hard to pay off the debt on the land, and you just lived a happy life farming, taking care of your family, living a debt-free life. And then the financial system was birthed in the 1900s. Like legitimately, the financial system that we know today was born in the 1900s, right? And changed the landscape of ownership around the world, because families owned a lot of land in America, and they gave up the power of land ownership. And when you have land ownership and you have the power to make your own food and have your natural source of water, and your quality of life is determined by the family. And that has been stripped away from a lot of people around the world through finance and global economics. And there's an element of that we need back in our society to say, buying these expensive cars, these expensive houses, on credit, it's unnecessary, right? When you have the power and the control of your own currency and your own money, you can say whatever you want, because nobody can put a muzzle over your face because you owe money.
Right.
So these are the power dynamics that have played out over time, and Africa and the rest of the world, citizens of the world, let's just say citizens of the world, have to come up with a way to decredit themselves, stop over leveraging yourself in the credit system, detoxify off of using credit. If you can't afford to use cash, then it's not your time to do it, right? A lot of businesses was in trouble, so they hopped over to the credit space to say, okay, I'm going to create a float, 30-day, 60-day, 90-day float in my business to help my business grow. But the problem with that, we never get off of that drug called credit, at least in the West. And so we see some of those same tenants trying to creep in here in the more developed countries in Africa to develop on the basis of credit, and that's not necessary. And so these are, again, this is an example of what you were saying about freedom and the system of cash, and the cash system, and where it's going now is going to a place of totalitarian control. What do you say about that in reference to crypto versus the jab and currency and freedom? How does that all play in your mind in reference to where we're going, say, in the next 2 to 5 years?
I think you got to add CBDCs in there, central bank digital currencies. That's pretty much where we're going. Our freedom, our privacy, the choice is being taken away. And it's it's rapidly eroding. Even the freedom of movement is rapidly eroding.
Wow.
I think crypto on a whole it helps to change a lot of that stuff. It helps to give us that freedom to say, hey, I can exit when I choose, and I can take my wealth with me. I don't have to go to a bank and say, hey, bank, let me withdraw $100,000 today because I need to leave now. Guess what that bank is going to tell you? We don't have that. We don't have that. If I'm stuck somewhere on another continent, and I can say, Brother D, hey, can you send me about, $1,000 worth of whatever crypto so I can, get done what I need to get done. Normal money system, that's a different story. They're going to monitor where you're sending that money to, and they're going to ask you a lot of questions. So these are the minor things that, again, that I think in a first world country like the United States, that when I talk to a lot of people, we take for granted. We take it for granted. But as the distractions continue popping up on the television every day, people are not focused on this. I think back to, all those protests where it was Occupy Wall Street, Occupied London. Those were brief moments in time that weren't sustained, that for the first time were focused on the right things. But just how the media works, all of that went away pretty quickly and nobody really talked about it. So I think the powers that be understand human nature. They understand behavioral economics. They understand that for the most part, most of the world, all you'd have to do is feed us some type of distraction. And my biggest thing too is, I think, a lot of times racism ends up being the biggest distraction, because it encompasses all sides. Culturalism, religion, all these different things end up being distractions, because we look at each other and we fight each other and we blame each other for all the unnecessary things that really don't matter. When at the end of the day, all of us want the same thing: freedom, accountability, integrity, be able to raise your family, be able to move about as freely as you want, be able to build some type of wealth for that next generation. We all want these things, regardless of what race, ethnicity, sexuality, origin, etc. And that's why I love crypto so much in so many ways, because all of those things are removed. All of those things are removed. It's just about, what do you have? What assets do you have? And I see it only growing, while the other system is going to continue to perpetuate that infringing on all our rights. That's it. That's what they want to do. They want that control. And
that's why the dynamics of economics on a macro level and even on a personal level is so vital. And choosing not to be distracted by the television. The majority of global problems are systemically centered around economics, cash distribution, or illiquidity.
Yep. And bro, and we talk about this. Think about how many people are just totally oblivious to all of what's going on. They don't see the rapid changes that are going on, that are happening at that level, because everyone's so distracted, and it's I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that's the amazing thing to me, is how fast and rapid this thing has sped up over the last 3 years. Think about it. This thing has sped up lights and bounds over these last 3 years. This whole entire space. It
has. And I think the acceleration of technology will continue. And there's a vacuum of things that are happening, and then this is one of the last topics that I'll touch on, is the reality of, as this whole jobless situation continues to play itself out, people being so enamored with being overburdened with debt and wanting to work, but when you realize you're going back to work and you are so behind on your bills
Yes.
that the jobs that you would normally take, you can no longer afford to take because it doesn't pay enough to cover your responsibilities, right? Which creates a vacuum scenario where people are not going to go to lower paying jobs anymore.
Yes.
Who's going to fill those roles?
Mhm.
And this is something that most people are not talking about. And it's going to be the age of robotics.
Exactly. Exactly. We're at a time in history where you've got so many of these new technologies just merging. AI, robotics, VR, 3D printing, EV, electrical vehicle technology.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things are going to run on blockchains. Internet of Things, you go 5G. All of these technologies are coming together at one time.
Mhm.
Many call it the fourth industrial revolution technologies,
It is.
and when you have a moment like that in history, you get major change. And I don't think most understand the time we're in. And this is why we're seeing all the rapid change, because all these things are merging at the same time. And, in the next 5-10 years, this world is going to look totally differently,
Yeah.
and we're going to have to choose. We're going to have to choose. Like the one thing I do tell people is you will only have central bank digital currency, corporate digital currency, whatever you want to call it, and cryptocurrencies, actual cryptocurrencies. Those are the three types of money in the next 5-10 years that we'll have. And if you don't educate yourself on what the differences between those three are, you might choose the wrong thing.
Right.
And if we're going down that path of government keep on infringing, slowly but surely infringing on our rights, infringing on our privacy, that's the state you get. That's the state you have. That happens. You think you're free, but you're actually living in a cage.
Yeah. And today is a digital cage.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
So with that said, I think we've done a very good job of talking about where you come from and your path of cryptocurrency and why crypto is so important. Any last words to the audience that will watch this particular show and broadcast today? Any last encouraging words or topics that you want to touch on and talk to them about?
I would just encourage the audience to just on a regular basis, just take one thing, one question you may have about crypto, and just do some research on it. Ask a friend, get some resources, whatever it is. Just do yourself a favor and do just a little bit of research. I think one of the biggest issues in this space is that it does take time to understand. It's almost like learning a new language, and that's daunting for many people. But you cannot have that be the barrier for you learning and picking up what's going on in the space. Because as we've talked about, the change is happening rapidly, and you want to be on the forefront of this for yourself, for your families, for the future generations. This is where the world is going. It's no longer a question of if. It's just a matter of when, how soon. So again, whatever questions you have, reach out to someone reach out to look for resources, but just do yourself a favor every now and again, even if it's just 10-15 minutes, take some time to research a topic that you have question about. The Bitcoin white paper it's 9 pages. Yes, there are a lot of technical a lot of technical jargon in there, but it's 9 pages that you can go through rather quickly. And that's a good start. YouTube has resources. Brother D has his page on Facebook, etc. So, and look for these people that you feel can explain this industry the best way for you, and in the most layman terms. Our people, we have to get ahead of this.
Awesome. I would say the same thing. To be ignorant in the day of knowledge is really a sad dilemma for a lot of us. And to piggyback off of what you're saying, Brother Ansel, is we grew up in the 70s and the 80s when access to information was extremely limited.
It wasn't there.
Right? We talking about the Encyclopedia Britannica days of information.
You had to wait for the new, like a couple of years for the new version to come out.
Exactly. You had to wait for that person to come and
knock on your door. Yep.
Knock on your door and get the new edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica to get some information. Well, folks, thank God we have moved with technology to a level where we can talk to people from Ghana to America in real time.
Yes.
And also have the ability of things and access to labyrinths like YouTube, Google, a lot of different digital outlets that provide easy, understandable ways to do things. If you want to learn how to fish, you can learn how to fish. If you want to learn how to cook, you can learn how to cook. Any type of dish you want to learn is available online.
That's right.
So much so is understanding macroeconomics, understanding financial literacy, understanding cryptocurrencies, understanding blockchain technologies. It's all online at our fingertips. On most mobile phones, you can look this stuff up, right? So don't be intimidated by the words blockchain or Bitcoin or digital currencies. Take that as a challenge and say, okay, I'm hearing about this. What is it? Let's go. Let's do some deep dive. Reach out to me, reach out to Brother Ansel, but don't stay in the realm of ignorance in a day and age of knowledge. So, Brother Ansel.
One more tip I would say that I find that helps a lot. If you find yourself in a car, if you commute to work, if you take your kids to school, anytime you're in that car, just put some type of podcast, some type of video on, and just let it play. Just let it play. Because what happens is you listen enough, it starts to soak in. So just that little tidbit right there, because we get in our cars and we turn on music all the time. Every now and again, turn on a podcast, turn on something educational, turn on something that talks about blockchain, that explains what Bitcoin is. After a while, you start to get it.
Yes.
Start to get it.
Guys, we're fortunate and honored and blessed to have Brother Ansel Floyd on the show today. We want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today on CNETv. And this is going to air live soon. And we thank you guys for tuning in. Be on the lookout for our next edition of EAT, where we continue to tackle the education in Africa on technology. We thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And be safe. Enjoy yourself. Let's have an outstanding week. And we will see you when we see you.